we go. Oh.
Mute. For the third time. Hello, Drew. Hey, Sergey.
Hi, Corey.
For you, I'm unplugging my Siri so it doesn't like go off during the middle of the webinar. Something close to Siri. All right.
Yay, thank you for doing this.
Oh, of course. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Good, good. I see a few people joining now. We're gonna get started here in, I don't know, 5-10 minutes.
Sounds good.
Or you want to practice sharing your slides, make sure everything works,
Yeah, perfect.
and also send them to me.
Yes. I'll do that. I'll send them first. You just want me to email them to you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, hopefully I don't run into any difficulties, but if I do, I know I can count on you. Oh, interesting. They exceed the file size limit.
Oh, you can drop them in our Dropbox folder.
Which one would you like to drop them in? I can do
Just do the
I'll do
literature one.
I'll do SmartLine shared folder. That way they
Okay.
want to see it. And see it. Oh, sweet. All right. There's that. That should be in there now. And then I will, now I'm starting the PowerPoint. I will share my screen and make sure it works. Oh, I'm still a participant.
I'll fix it.
All right. And you're a host or co-host, so you can do the video share.
You should be able to. Hey, Drew, can you make him be able to share screen?
Yes. Let's see. You should be a co-host now.
Perfect. I see it. Okay. So if I go to my PowerPoint and go into slides, you see that?
Yep, that's good.
Yeah.
To move in between,
Mm-hmm.
not getting frozen or anything.
Nope.
Let me.
We're just gonna wait a few minutes for more people to get here, everyone, then we're gonna get started. I'll introduce you, Corey, and then you can jump into your talk.
Sounds great. There's some echo, just a tiny bit.
Yeah, that's me. I'll keep myself muted. Looks like Agatha raised her hand. I'm gonna let her talk just to see. Yeah, Gotha, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Scott.
Oh, hey, Scott.
Hi, Corey. I'm the administrator here at DCM. I just wanted to say thank you for participating in this.
Oh, of course. Yeah, thanks, Scott. I'm glad to be doing it.
Okay, it looks like Drew finally left. Okay, cool.
Nice to meet you, Scott.
Yeah, you too. Great. So you and Sergey work together? Is that right?
Yep, we're coworkers at Cofrin Logan, and we're both smart recovery trained facilitators also. So we
Oh, okay.
a group every Friday night for our friends here in Lawrence.
Oh, excellent. I didn't know that.
Sergey's a humble guy, so he doesn't like to brag.
Oh, yeah. Well, cool. Well, I'm gonna turn off my video and adjust my lighting in here. So,
All right, well, thanks again, Scott.
oh, yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Oh, jeez. Okay. Not much better. I'm in my wife's office. So,
Do you prefer to work in the dark, Scott, or with lots of light?
no, I usually sit in another part of the house, which has a lot of light. And it used to have a wall and a door that I could close, but I tore that wall out last week. So now my workspace is just like open to the rest of my loud family. Here I am upstairs in the dark.
Google's made a killing off of, you know, and a lot of those tech companies, they love open workspaces.
Oh yeah. No, nothing.
Does it work for you?
Mm-mm.
No?
No, I don't think it really works for anybody. It's distracting. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't trust any like large corporation to do anything that's actually like in their employees' interests. So I wonder if, you know, like spaces that are open feel more sort of like convivial, and that like you can talk to your coworkers more, especially like when you're not at a cubicle, but you're at like a cool contemporary desk, you know.
Yeah.
It feels like a perk to like have a cool desk. And
right, you have like a slide that takes you down to the next floor. You need to go see someone else.
But then, you know, because you're chatting with your coworkers, you're distracted by the loud people around you. You're getting less work done, but you still have to get your work done. So you're just going to spend more time at work.
Right. People like live at Google. They've set it up where like I watched something years ago about how they have like nap pods there.
Oh.
Like soundproof little pods that people can go into and sleep.
Yeah. Awful. Yeah. I mean, all these corporate headquarters that have daycares and dry cleaners. It all seems, you know, like it's in your favor because you don't have to like rush out of work to like go pick up your kid on time. But that's just it. It's like you don't have to rush out of work.
Right.
You know, if the daycare closes at 6 and your previous daycare was 25 minutes away, but now it's just 2 floors below you, you can stay until 6 instead of 5:20.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, good evening. Welcome to the first Spring 2021 University Community Forum hosted by the Ecumenical Campus Ministries. My name is Sergey and I help to coordinate the forum along with Scott. Today I'm going by Agatha Harkness, who's our ATM administrator. Since this is our first forum of the semester, I want to welcome everyone part of the Lawrence and broader Kansas community, folks from the University of Kansas and the friends of the ECM. To give you an idea of how this virtual forum will work, the format will be, we'll start with 45 minutes of the speaker, followed by the remaining time dedicated for questions and answers. We also elected a few ACM, a small group of ECM affiliated folks to be able to turn their video on to make this as close to a live seminar experience as possible. If you have any questions for Corey, please reserve them for the Q&A session at the very end, and please keep yourselves muted. Before introducing today's speaker, I wanted to briefly say a few words about the forum. The University Community Forum has been bringing together the KU and Lawrence communities since the 1940s. This program hosts presentations by faculty, students, and community members to educate and facilitate dialogue on current ideas and events that shape our world and discourse. I think it's the longest running speaker event at the University of Kansas since its inception. And finally, I will introduce our speaker. Corey Monley graduated in May 2019 from the University of Kansas with a Bachelor of General Studies in Psychology. Currently, he works with Dr. Bruce Liese to implement a program training community members to facilitate cognitive behavioral addiction mutual help groups, i.e. Smart Recovery, and one-on-one addiction recovery support phone line, Smart Line. Corey also assisted in program evaluation for Warriors Ascent, an integrative program for veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD. His research interests revolve around the efficacy and effectiveness of therapeutic interventions, especially those related to addictions, and how interventions can be made more accessible. Corey also works part-time as a peer support specialist at a local community mental health center, where he provides counseling to individuals in recovery from serious mental illness. He's also one of my dearest friends, and I'm very excited for his talk tonight. And I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you, Sergey. And thank you, Scott, and the rest of the ECM administrators for having me on tonight. Just because I like to know people on a first name basis, I was looking here at the attendees. So I want to welcome Jim and Lucas and Nobuyuki, and I know that we're all on Zoom, so those may or may not be your real actual names, but welcome and thank you for taking the time out of your day. And if you're in Lawrence, taking a break from this awesome weather today to log on to Zoom and learn about Smart Recovery. I'm really glad you're here and interested in what we're doing. So I can just go ahead and get started. Go ahead and share my slides here. And a heads up, just because sometimes my computer's been a little difficult, I've shared these slides with Sergey. So if we experience any technical difficulties, then he'll start manning the slides, but hopefully that will not happen tonight. So anyways, tonight's talk is about Smart Recovery here in Douglas County. My name is Corey Monley. I'm the Smart Recovery Project Coordinator, and I work closely with Sergey at the Cofrin Logan Center for Addiction Research and Treatment at the University of Kansas. Sergey did a great job of introducing me, so we get to blow right past this intro slide. I'm the Smart Recovery Coordinator. Like Sergey said, the Program Director and Volunteer Facilitator Training Director is Dr. Bruce Liese. I've also been a Smart Recovery Facilitator since 2018, and I co-facilitate a meeting every Friday night on Zoom with my loyal confidant, Sergey. And it's always a blast. And yeah, I'm really interested in how psychological treatments for addiction and other mental health problems can really not only be effective, but how can they actually reach people? You know, there's a huge implementation gap in our ability to, you know, we can create good treatment. When does it end up in the hands of consumers? And so that's what I like most about my work. is being able to be a part of that. So in terms of why smart recovery is out there, well, it's out there because people really struggle with addiction, and entering into recovery is tough. Drug deaths have more than tripled since the year 2000. Many of you know that we're in the middle of an opioid epidemic right now. And it's actually not just an opioid epidemic. There are some recent data that are showing that the use of stimulants like methamphetamine is also increasing. The basic prevalence rate of addiction, if you just measure it in terms of a year, is about 1 in 10. So you line up any 10 people on the street, the odds are at least one of them will have an addiction. But the more kind of staggering fact to me is the lifetime prevalence. And that is the fact that 27% of adults in the US will experience addiction in their life. And unfortunately, under half of these individuals receive any kind of treatment. There's a lot of barriers to treatment seeking that we don't have time to really crack open tonight, but here's just a few. Low income, lack of insurance, poverty, that makes it difficult to obtain treatment. Also belonging to a marginalized group, that's associated with additional barriers as well as potentially shame and self-stigma that are experienced by a lot of people with addiction and mental illness that makes it difficult to reach out for help. And then really in more rural communities and sometimes in communities like Lawrence and the broader Douglas County area that are kind of more rural or suburban, there's just kind of generally a lack of available resources sometimes. So plugging those in to fill the gap has been mutual help groups like Smart Recovery. Addiction mutual help groups. Oh, by the way, I've included a bunch of pictures from our Smart Recovery groups. And so you'll see those throughout the slides. This is a group that we put on at the Lawrence Public Library. Anyways, an addiction mutual help group is really just a place where people gather together and if they're experiencing similar problems, they come together to support each other and cope effectively. Probably the most well-known addiction mutual help group is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was founded in 1935 by Bill Wilson in Akron, Ohio. But pretty quickly after AA was founded, some others, other mutual help groups for addiction started to appear. Those include Narcotics Anonymous, that was founded in the 1950s. Women for Sobriety is notable, also founded in the 1970s, although they're not too big here in the Midwest. I think they're really bigger out west and up north. And then Smart Recovery was founded in 1994, so it's just a few months older than me. And most of these groups also have variations available for their loved ones, like Smart Recovery does a friends and family group, and Alcoholics Anonymous has Al-Anon, and that's where loved ones with people with addiction can come together and talk and receive their own support. So kind of an overview of what Smart Recovery is and ways it might be different from mutual help groups that are more represented in the media. The basic premise of Smart Recovery is that both addiction and recovery is a choice. People can choose whether or not to engage in their addictive behavior. We work with people on all sorts of goals. That includes stopping entirely, controlling use, or moderating. And we just kind of meet people where they're at. We're based in cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's just kind of a fancy way of saying we really focus on the relationship between thoughts and feelings and behaviors and how the way we think and our emotions can really contribute to addiction or recovery. Something else that's different between Smart Recovery and groups like AA is that discussion is encouraged. In AA, usually there's kind of a monologue format where one person talks and then the next person talks and then the next person talks. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but Smart likes to encourage an active discussion around the Smart Recovery tools and any topics. Participants do learn tools to engage in addictive recovery. So in addition to receiving support from each other, talking about their lived experience, they walk out of meetings or log out of meetings with some take-home strategies they can use between groups to enhance their recovery. And then also each Smart Recovery group is led by a trained volunteer facilitator. And part of the Smart Recovery program in Douglas County that we'll be talking about a bit later is opportunities for training to become a volunteer facilitator. That's been really rewarding for many people. So a bit more about how people can benefit from smart recovery. Really, participants learn to identify not just what triggers their addiction, but their core values and strengths that they can use to overcome an addictive behavior and engage in other meaningful activities. Group members really learn to evaluate kind of the pros and cons of their addictive behavior and the relationship of those towards their long-term goals. Noticing kind of triggers and high-risk situations that put people at risk for engaging in drinking or smoking or shooting is also important. And then what we really like to focus on, especially in our group here in Lawrence, is how to replace addictive thinking with recovery-oriented thinking. And we'll get more into that in a minute. And really a big component of smart recovery too is not just helping people stop using or cut back, but really to help them engage in activities to replace those behaviors that are more rewarding. So other programs have steps. Smart Recovery has the 4 points. And these are just kind of key areas that have been shown by science to be important in recovery. They don't really go in any sort of linear order, but based on how a person shows up to a smart recovery group and what they're wanting to work on, one or more of these kind of points may be relevant. The first point is building and maintaining motivation. So we know that change of any kind is difficult. Think about the last time you tried a new diet or said, I'm going to exercise more, or anything like that. Building motivation to even get to that point is tough. So we have some strategies that help people do that. In addiction, what happens when people stop putting a chemical or engaging in a behavior that brings them pleasure is that your body and mind get really upset at you. And that shows up in the form of cravings and urges. So a big part of what we do in Smart Recovery is also to give people some strategies to be able to cope with those cravings and urges and overcome them. The kind of heart and soul of Smart Recovery is point 3, which is managing thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And we'll get more to that in a minute and how that all kind of ties together. And then the final point, like I said before, is really living a balanced life, finding things outside of addiction that bring you joy. So I thought it'd be kind of fun for the next part of this talk to really break down 4 smart recovery tools, 1 tool for each of the smart recovery points. So one of the most common tools we end up using for people to build motivation is to help them kind of weigh the pros and cons of engaging in their addictive behavior. And addiction can be tricky. It's characterized by ambivalence. You can think of ambivalence as a sort of scale where one side of the scale is saying don't do this, and the other side of the scale is saying no, why don't you go ahead and do this? That's big in addiction. And the degree to which one side of the scale is tipping towards recovery versus one side of the scale is tipping toward addiction is the degree to which a person can expect to be really successful. So the cost benefit analysis is a tool that we use in smart recovery groups to really help people kind of get a complete picture of addiction and of recovery towards tipping that scale more in the recovery direction. And the way we do this is pretty simple. We just ask people, what are the pros of your addiction? What are the cons of your addiction? What are the pros of recovery? What are the cons of recovery? And you'll see here on this table that, these are just some common pros and cons that we hear during smart recovery groups. So for example, I like drinking because I just feel buzzed, I feel high. It maybe helps me numb out to relieve some anxiety. When I'm with my drinking buddies, I just feel really social and I'm having a good time. And quitting drinking, you know, moving down here toward the cons of not drinking, that kind of sucks, you know, because I might experience some withdrawal. You know, if I'm drinking to relieve anxiety, then it's probably likely when I stop drinking that I'll experience anxiety. And a lot of times, because people, when they're engaging in an addiction, kind of do that to the exclusion of a lot of other activities, boredom can be kind of a big con of not drinking. So we want to help people see like the complete picture of their addiction. And so understanding kind of the downsides of recovery, the upsides of addiction is important. But then we want to get people to see kind of, well, what motivates me to stop, right? And so inevitably, when we ask questions like that, people will start to talk about the cons of drinking. You know, it costs a lot of money. You know, it's really messing with my interpersonal relationships. You know, maybe I'm gaining weight from my alcohol use. And then the pros of not drinking. Well, I'll save a lot of money. I'll have some improved health. And, you know, maybe I can work on having a healthy relationship with my wife and with some other people. So when we do this activity, people really kind of have an aha moment where they say, well, I've thought about all this before, but I haven't all put it all out in the open like this. And it's really helpful to see it kind of all there. And so after people do a cost benefit analysis, then the next kind of point is coping with urges. And we do this many ways. And you guys will all understand in a minute why I have a picture of an angry pill, a Joe Camel cigarette looking guy in Clippy on the screen. We help people cope with cravings and urges in many ways, but one of the ways we like to do this is through a tool called DISARM. And DISARM is just an acronym that stands for Destructive Imagery Self-Awareness Refusal Method. The idea of DISARM is to kind of get the craving part of addiction out of your own head so it's more manageable, right? Craving will just show up by, hey, you know, you should take a drink. You're feeling really anxious. A drink might help you right now. But a lot of times people kind of hang on to those craving related thoughts like they're their own. So what can be helpful is kind of putting those thoughts onto something else, you know? And so what we've asked people to do is to personify your addiction. You know, if your addiction was like a person or a thing, what would it look like? And what would it say to you? The reason I have Clippy on here, I don't know if any of you have used Microsoft Word from back in the day. There was this clip art guy named Clippy that would pop up like every 10 minutes when you were trying to write stuff and just get really annoying. And when we were doing the DISARM tool with someone once, they said that, you know, I see my addiction to Adderall kind of like Clippy from Microsoft Word. It's just, you know, I have this little pill guy that pops up in my head every 10 minutes and is saying, you know, crush me up, snort that line, take me, you know, I'll help you be more productive, right? And what was interesting is when we started doing this tool with this person, you know, they seem to have a lot more ability to manage their cravings, to really say no. You know, saying no to yourself is hard, but saying no to someone else or something else, especially if it's like a caricature, can make it pretty easy. So like I said earlier, the heart and soul of smart recovery is really managing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And we do that by helping walk people through what's called the ABC model. This is kind of a staple of cognitive therapy, and it's been used for all sorts of problems, ranging from anxiety to depression to phobias. But smart recovery really likes to apply this to addiction. The way that most people think about human behavior and human emotion seems to be that kind of stuff just happens to me, right? There's some kind of a trigger, and then there's some kind of an emotion, or there's some kind of a trigger, and then I act a certain way, right? So for example, triggers They can be external outside of you, they can be internal within you. A common trigger could be, going to a party, meeting new people, maybe not now during COVID, but maybe when we're all out of Zoom. That can be an external trigger for many people that elicits an internal trigger of anxiety. And so how do people cope with social anxiety? Well, sometimes they drink, and drinking is effective at reducing anxiety because of the pharmacological properties of alcohol. So the relationship between triggers and between a decision to engage in an addictive behavior is usually functional. But we know that there are plenty of people that go to parties and maybe even experience some anxiety when they go to parties and decide not to drink or manage their drinking effectively. So we would expect that if triggers really ruled the day, then everyone would just act the same way and we'd all be robots. Not true. Why? Because there are thoughts in the middle of this relationship. And this is kind of why it's called the ABC model. A stands for the activating event, that's the trigger. B stands for beliefs or automatic thoughts. And T stands for consequence. And it's not consequence because it's good or bad. It's just consequence because it logically causally follows the belief. So this is just like the slide before, except the only new thing now in the middle is the actual thoughts. So if someone with an alcohol problem goes to a party and they experience anxiety, they might have thoughts like, I'm worried what people will think of me, right? And once they start experiencing that social anxiety, they might think to themselves, if I drink, then my anxiety will go away. I've made this thought here bold and red because that's an addictive belief. These are the type of beliefs that we target in smart recovery. If a person has the thought, if I drink, my anxiety will go away, I'll have a better time at this party if I drink, and so on, then obviously the next step is to drink. And that will be reinforced because the drinking will reduce anxiety temporarily, right? But we all know people with addictions, and we all know that the long-term consequences of drinking in this way will not be helpful down the line. So what's the solution? You have to replace that thought with something else. And we help people dispute the addictive beliefs and construct new beliefs, right? I've added a green belief here because this is a recovery-oriented belief. Drinking won't work long-term. I'll end up making a fool of myself, but this party is a good chance to meet new people, make new friends, right? If we can help someone drop a thought like that into their head, then they won't drink. And what will happen as a result in terms of this consequences bubble over here, the behavior will change. They'll focus on meeting new people, getting curious, having conversations. And you know what? They'll probably feel relaxed and accepted once they start doing that. So it's kind of interesting. You'll notice this is the addiction ABC, leads to feeling relaxed. The recovery-oriented ABC also leads to feeling relaxed. And the more people can make choices like this, the less addiction will interfere with their lives and the more they'll be able to engage in recovery. So that's kind of the heart and soul of smart recovery. And we do that in many different ways. We navigate people through the ABC model explicitly like we do here. And then if we're running a group or facilitating, all the facilitators and group members kind of know that this is running in the background and we're going to be asking people about their thoughts and how those help or hurt them in terms of their goals. So that's point 3. The last point is balanced living, right? So what has to happen when you take an addiction out of your life? If you just do that, life's probably going to suck. It's probably going to be boring. It might even be worse because now you've kind of lost your coping strategy for a lot of problems. And so creating a balanced life and replacing addiction with other activities is super important. It's really important because in a serious addiction, drinking or cocaine use or marijuana use or binge eating or gambling, usually that becomes like the predominant behavior in someone's life, right? Everyone walks through life doing other things, but maybe, you know, going to the casino after work is what they're thinking about all day, and it kind of rules all their decisions and maybe the only source of enjoyment. So we have to help people find other things that can replace that addiction, that can really give someone, if we think about the cost benefit analysis that we did before, that table, that gives someone kind of the pros of an addictive behavior without all the cons, right? People drink because they're able to reduce anxiety. People smoke cigarettes at work on breaks to congregate with coworkers, right? So it's a very social, it's very social. It's related a lot to emotion regulation. So we want to be able to give people activities that are also able to do that. And then for many people, you know, getting high, getting drunk, going to the casino is just pleasurable, right? That's a huge part of addictive behavior. It's just that it feels good, right? So we want to give people other things that feel good. The trick with these vitally absorbing creative interests, which is the tool we use here to do this, is that they have to be personal, right? I am clumsy. I can't play sports. I'm, you know, terrible at anything athletic. So that's not going to work for me. It might work for someone else. I like the guitar. That's why I put a picture of a guitar in this slide. So that's my vitally absorbing creative interest. That really gives me, you know, a sense of joy and creativity and euphoria that some other people might get through using. So we help people find activities for them that can replace the addictive behavior. So that's kind of smart recovery in a nutshell, what we do, the kind of structure and points of smart recovery, and some tools that we use to help people. And I believe, yes, here, the next slide is, the next section is really all about how we've been able to help people locally. So smart recovery, I think I said this earlier, it was founded in 1994. There's about 3,000 groups across the world, and I believe over 20 countries. But we didn't have any smart recovery here in Lawrence for a while. So when I first started, I was actually finishing up my undergraduate education with Sergey at the University of Kansas, and my mentor, Dr. Liese, approached me and said, "Hey, I have this idea. There's not a lot of science-based addiction care here locally. None of it's accessible to people in terms of being free or low cost. I want to create a resource for people to have this sort of cognitive behavioral science-based care." And so we established the first smart recovery group in 2018 at Lawrence Public Library. That's the picture to the right here. Meeting room B was our home for many nights prior to COVID, where it's now Zoom room 9,000 whatever and whatever. So the first group was established at Lawrence Public Library. We grew pretty rapidly, and by February 2020, right before COVID hit, we had established 7 in-person groups. 4 of these were what Smart Recovery calls open groups, and these are groups that are available to any community member. They can just walk in, right? A person with an addiction, friends and family of an addiction, anyone interested can just walk in. And so 3 of those groups, we had a Monday, Wednesday, and a Friday group, were at the library. And then the other community group was at a local treatment center on a Saturday morning. And then we also had a few closed groups. Closed groups are for specific institutions or facilities. And the first closed group that we started was at the Douglas County Jail here locally. We also started a closed group at the Psychological Services Center, Watkins, for KU students exclusively. And then the final closed group was a group I facilitated at Burt Nash, the local community mental health center for people in transitional living. And so we got a lot of tread pretty quickly, but as we all know, last year, COVID rolled to town, and when you facilitate rolling open walk-in groups where people are, relatively anonymous, we don't collect phone numbers, we don't collect email addresses. It's pretty tough to contact people in the middle of a pandemic. So there were a couple ways we had to deal with this to still bring smart recovery to people. The first way we did this was by launching online groups through Zoom. And so we have a group that meets every Wednesday night now from 5 to 6:30. And then we have a group that Sergey and I facilitate that meets every Friday night from 5 to 6:30. And groups average about 15 members. Initially, I don't know about Dr. Liese, I don't know about Sergey, but initially I'll say I was pretty skeptical that we were going to be able to see the same kind of community support and success that we had with the in-person groups on Zoom. And I've been really surprised. I don't know if it's because in the pandemic, we're all receiving kind of less social interaction. And so maybe these Zoom groups are, one, like the few times a week where they can become really vulnerable, or if it's some other factor, but really people have opened up and shared so vulnerably and been so supportive to each other and really helped each other out on these meetings. To the point where our groups now are averaging about 15 members each, 15 members per meeting. And our largest group actually did occur during COVID. We had over 20 members on a Zoom call, and it kind of looked like the Brady Bunch, but it was a lot of fun, and people really seemed to love them. So that's kind of been the groups in Douglas County. We also created, prior to when we knew we were going to be able to go online with Zoom, when we didn't know that was an option, we quickly created a smart recovery line. And this is something that Dr. Liese and I did that's unique to smart recovery. The smart recovery line is only here in Douglas County right now. It's kind of a pilot project. But our idea was that people really need to be able to access smart recovery when we're in the middle of a pandemic, when we're all social distancing. People need to be able to access smart recovery if we're in the middle of a pandemic, everything's on Zoom, but they may not have a laptop, right? Or a computer to log on, or they may not have access to internet, right? So we wanted to create a resource for people to be able to still receive smart. And so the way we did this was simple. We rounded up all the facilitators that we had trained, like Sergey and Matt, who you'll meet here in a minute, and said, hey, what do you think about volunteering to man a phone line, once a week for 4 hours a night? And everyone said, yeah, let's do it. And so we were able to establish a resource that runs 7 days a week, 4 to 8 p.m. If you called this Saturday, I would pick up the phone and help you out with your addiction. We're able to be there for these people and provide one-to-one smart recovery that uses all the same tools we do in the group. And so we've had a lot of success with this. Understandably, the reasons why people call Smartline might be a little different from groups compared to the Zoom groups and the in-person groups. Really what stands out, at least personally with my experiences with Smartline, is that a lot of callers are reaching out to cope with their urges and receive and cravings more than anything else, which is what it was designed to do. And that's specifically why we put it at the time of day that it is, 4 to 8 p.m. Central Time, because that's going to be a tough time for people. It's when their workday is ending, nighttime starting. We figured that was the time people would crave the most. So that's when we offered this service. And then a lot of people are just wanting social and emotional support, someone to talk to about their addiction and other mental health problems. And so we have a lot of people that have called. We have many that call regularly. I think one of our Smartline regulars, who's also attends our Zoom groups regularly has called at least 10 times, and they kind of combo the Smart Line with the Zoom groups and have really benefited. So that's the Smart Line. In terms of how these groups have kind of helped overall since we started in October, I had a few stats here for us. This, by the way, is just a picture of what one of our Smart Recovery Zoom groups looks like, with our pal Sergey smack dab in the middle with a big old smile. I think you're actually wearing the same shirt that you're wearing. No, it looks pretty close. But anyway, that's to get a taste of what Smart Recovery on Zoom is kind of like. So in terms of in-person meetings, Zoom meetings, and the Smart Line combined, we've been able to help over 300 community members since we established ourselves here in Lawrence. And I do want to say that that does not count people from Burt Nash or the Douglas County Jail that have attended groups. So the actual number may be a bit higher than even that. Really importantly, is the fact that many of these group members experience unemployment or homelessness, and were able to access these groups anyway. You know, being able to provide science-based care to this population is huge, and I really enjoy that we've been able to do that. About 7% of the people that have attended our Smart Recovery groups are not just people with addictions. We also have people with friends and family of loved ones with addictions that have attended. And traditionally, groups are kind of split. You know, you have your people with addictions group, and then you have, you know, friends and family of people with addictions in their separate group. Smart Recovery traditionally does this, but we've really found it helpful locally to just bring everyone in on the same group. And that really helps people, you know, the friends and family especially, figure out more about what addiction is like with their loved one, how their loved one experiences addiction, and, you know, maybe some strategies for maintaining a healthy relationship, regardless of whether that person is using or not. In terms of what stands out the most, and when we ask participants, hey, what do you get out of Smart Recovery? Far and away, this is a safe space. This is a warm space. I feel so invited here. I feel so welcome here. You know, another key thing is, you know, I felt all alone. I didn't realize there were other people like me, right? This is really big. You know, when we're talking about participants that might struggle with behavioral addictions like gambling or binge eating, alcohol use is pretty overrepresented in like the mutual help group scene. So especially for those participants that have the behavioral addictions, seeing that their experience really is similar to someone with a chemical addiction really does a lot in reducing shame and kind of normalizing their experience. And then a big factor, you know, for people like me and Sergey, who are like total nerds and love psychology, is that a lot of people just like learning about the science of addiction. We try to throw that in there as well. And then of course, the Smart Recovery tools that people get to take home and use with them between meetings and between Smart Line calls. Hopefully this video here works. This is Matt, one of our Smart Recovery attendees, and he is going to tell you about how Smart Recovery has helped him.
Almost 2 years ago, I was to the point in my life where I have been asked to let
We can't see the video.
my life. So it was.
You can't see the video?
It's not playing for me. It's playing for you, Scott? No.
I can pull it up on a YouTube.
Yeah, do that.
All right.
Almost 2 years ago,
So you can hear the audio though. Audio is fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna stop this for just a second, and then I'll have to share my Safari here.
Corey, while you're looking out, did you find it? I was just going to ask Sergey a question. How does someone become a smart recovery coordinator?
Coordinator?
Yeah, like if you like for instance, you volunteer and you lead these meetings on Friday nights. How did is there a training session that you have to go through, or
That's actually part of the presentation. That's the last part that Corey's gonna get into.
great. Well,
Yeah.
look at me.
So thank you for asking. Corey, it says that you've started screen sharing, but I can't see the screen.
Okay. Yeah, that was a great question, Scott. You're ahead of the curve. Okay, yeah, I'm screen sharing, but it's not pulling up. Maybe you can find it. I just went under the Lifespan Institute's YouTube account and was able to pull it up.
Do you see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
Years ago, I was to the point in my life, almost 2 years ago, I was to the point in my life where I had been asked politely to get the out of the house by my wife. So it was to the point where I was on my own. I was by myself and I just couldn't stop drinking. I tried, couldn't stop, tried, couldn't stop. And so I thought, well, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take so many freaking sleeping pills that I'm not going to wake up for like a day or so. And by then I will have made it through the initial rough part of detoxing. And the only problem was I took like, I don't know, a big giant handful and washed it down with a big old giant mouthful of whiskey. And I didn't wake up, period. I was dead. I can't remember how my wife found me, but she found me. I was out, rushed to the emergency room, and they thought he's dead. They brought me back. When I was in the hospital, I was introduced to a lady who works for Heartland Radak, and she came into the hospital room and said, hey, this is what you need to do. I suggest you go to AA meetings. And I said, I've been to a freaking 1,000 AA meetings. It's not working. She handed me a business card, and it said Smart Recovery. I went to the first meeting and I just kept coming to the meetings and kept coming. And pretty soon I had a month, and then I had 2 months of abstinence, and 6 months, and which at the time I thought my wife and I were getting a divorce because she had filed for a divorce. But after about 8 months in abstinence, we started just talking and set up counseling. So after about a year of attending SMART, Dr. Bruce said, hey, anybody interested in becoming a facilitator, which means you would lead your own groups. I said, I need to sign up for that, to help. I need to give back.
So that is Matt and Matt's story. He is an absolute rock star, and like the video said, he was able to really enhance his recovery through SMART. And then he said, you know what? I want to give back. How do I start doing that? So if my screen sharing will work, that is what we will talk about next to answer Scott's question. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So for some reason, the Safari share didn't work. But anyway, here we go. So Smart Recovery Facilitator training was really developed to expand Smart Recovery meetings rapidly and to give people an opportunity to give back to their community. I mean, Dr. Liese and I have had such a wonderful time being able to help people. And really, I can't speak for him, but I know for me personally, in addition to helping people, it's much more rewarding to even help people become helpers and watch people become helpers. So in order to expand groups and give people an opportunity to give back, we developed a free training program for Douglas County residents to become smart recovery facilitators. And like I said earlier, every smart recovery meeting is led by a trained volunteer facilitator. So you have to receive training to facilitate any smart recovery meeting. That's not just Douglas County, that's anywhere. And so traditionally, that entails about 20 hours of online training through the Smart Recovery website. But what we wanted to do, really because there's a gap between online training and real world practice, is to give people an opportunity to practice what they learn in the online training. And so Dr. Liese provides 16 hours across 4 sessions of additional live training. And he's an addiction psychologist. So the level of training that you get from that goes even beyond really what's covered in the smart recovery training, and goes really in depth into the science of addiction, basic counseling skills, cognitive behavioral principles, the tools of smart recovery, and group dynamics and group facilitation. And what I like most about the training is that people get repeated opportunities to facilitate mock smart recovery groups. We'll have 10 to 12 volunteers sitting in a room. They'll do kind of a lecture style training, a discussion style about whatever the topic is we talked about that day, whether it's motivational interviewing or an ABC model or a DISARM tool. And then we'll band together and practice that and give each other feedback to improve. So that's kind of the scope of training. And to answer your question, Scott, how people become involved as facilitators here in Douglas County. You don't have to be a behavioral health professional to do this. In fact, sometimes it's advantageous for people to come in just as volunteers, because you don't get so stuck in the theory mud and you're just able to jump straight in and start helping people directly. We've had just volunteers, we've had peer support staff, we've had social workers, we've had professors, kind of anyone from across the community is totally welcome. And for those of you who are interested, the next training is beginning this spring. It's going to be virtual over Zoom. And we do have a mandatory info session coming up on March 13th. That is Saturday. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. That's to tell people more about smart recovery training, and help people, get signed up for the online portion of training. So anyways, that is smart recovery in Douglas County, smart recovery facilitator training. So now I believe it is time for questions, and I'll stop sharing my slide.
Thank you, Corey, for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions? You can type it in the Q&A or in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, Lucas, I'll allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Before I start my bias out there, I am a member of AA. It's worked for me. I know it doesn't work for everybody. And if it doesn't, just because it doesn't work for somebody, it doesn't mean it's their fault. A lot of people do believe that, and they're wrong. I guess one of my questions was, how do you look at coexisting conditions? Depression, OCD, anxiety, that kind of stuff.
Great question, Lucas. I did want to comment briefly on, I don't think it's a bias. I think your own personal experience in AA is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I didn't really point it out in the presentation, but a lot of our people that attend SMART also attend AA, and they say it helps them fill the gaps between one and the other. So there's this idea that if they're not compatible, but they totally are. They don't step on each other's toes. And in fact, one of our rules in the group is to tell people no AA bashing, because we want people to access the resources that work for them, and we don't want to badmouth anything that's helping someone. So I thought I'd throw that out there, Lucas.
Yeah.
And then to answer your question on the co-occurring conditions, I will just briefly go back and share my slides here quickly. We've been on Zoom for like a year now, but I still haven't mastered sharing my screen yet. So in terms of co-occurring conditions, we see the ABC model here. We really recognize problems like anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive traits as triggers that profoundly influence beliefs and make it more likely that a person will engage in an addictive behavior. That's why addiction is co-occurring with all sorts of mental health problems. So we focus primarily on the addictive related beliefs, but we might also target a belief like I'm worried what people will think of me, right? That's a belief related to social anxiety, right? Not only I'm worried what people will think of me, but people will think negatively of me and I know it, right? That's a social anxiety belief. And so we might spend some time helping a person dispute that belief to maybe suggest to them, why don't you attend that party? And instead of drinking, try just talking to 3 people that you seem interested in and see how it goes. And when people do things like that, it really helps them not only not drink or not engage in their addictive behavior, but also address, the co-occurring anxiety at the same time. And then also things like trauma. I wanted to throw that in there. Trauma, discrimination, adverse childhood experiences. Those are all factors earlier on in life that can really influence just general beliefs about a person's place in the world, about their effectiveness, about emotions. A big belief and that kind of pervades all addictive behaviors is, I can't handle feeling, some type of negative way. And so a big thing that ends up happening that kind of cuts across disorders that we might call transdiagnostic is that we help people really learn that, well, discomfort is a part of life. Feeling anxious, feeling sad sometimes, maybe even feeling depressed sometimes is something everyone goes through. And how do you want to handle that? Do you want to handle it through drinking, or do you want to find another way to be able to handle that? So I hope, that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope it was a helpful answer for you, Lucas.
Yeah, it was. Thank you. I have a few more questions, but I won't. If somebody else has questions, I won't jump in.
I'm just gonna ask, where can people sign up for the info session, Corey?
Where can people sign up for the info session?
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in the info session, I'm going to put my email address in the chat box. And then if you just send me an email with your info, I will get you signed up and get the Zoom link out to you.
Okay, so one other thing, well, the first one is when I'm recommending somebody try this, try SMART, I'd want to know when I'm doing it. I'm not sure about the privacy of the program, and I just want to make sure they can make an informed decision. Is there, because we saw a lot of slides with people, with people in the rooms, and that the glass door and wall in the library. I'm not criticizing. I'd like to be able to tell somebody.
Yeah, I think these are great questions, Lucas. Surely questions anyone who's going to receive addiction support, deserves to be able to ask. So I'm glad you're asking them. In terms of confidentiality, that's like our #1 rule. In terms of the pictures of that Smart Recovery group, we put that on for a story in the, I believe it was the Lawrence Journal World and maybe the Lifespan Institute with KU. And so everyone that you saw there in that room had to sign a consent waiver to say, yes, I'm okay with my image being used in any sort of presentation or data. So yeah, we don't take pictures of like our normal groups. That information stays in the groups You know, we play by Vegas rules just like everyone else.
Yeah, I figured that was probably the case. I just wanted to ask. I guess the other question I have is, what is the model for increasing capacity? You know, of SMART, you know, throughout the country or wherever, or, you know, in Douglas County. 'Cause I'm just curious. One of the things that I've noticed during the pandemic is we've had a lot fewer people coming in for their first time, and it kind of seems like once things go back to semi-normal, it feels like we're just going to get this giant influx.
Mm.
But more than just that, I'm just curious how it would sustainably expand capacity.
That's a great question also. I want to make sure I answer your question too, though. I mean, are you wondering how Smart Recovery is going to handle things post-COVID when everything opens back up, or more just generally?
More just generally, I think I got sidetracked there.
Okay, yeah, that was a good point though. You know, I'm not 100% sure Smart Recovery's actual, like, their model of expansion. I know if you Google smartrecovery.org, they do have a 5-year plan for expansion that I believe is public. So if you're interested in reading more, you could read about that. I do know that in addition to what we've done locally, I mean, there's so many meetings across the world now, and the rate of expansion is rapid. I mean, when Smart Recovery first started out in 1994, it was just meetings here and there. And it's certainly not as widespread as things like AA that have been around for much longer. But you look at the trend and it's growing rapidly. What's really cool about Smart Recovery too, in addition to the in-person meetings, they really have a super robust online community with forums and online Zoom meetings. And that was going on well before the pandemic. So that kind of helps them sustain too. In terms of the kind of expansion model, in terms of how people become facilitators and how meetings grow, it's really typically similar to that of something like AA, where you have a meeting in one area, you have a person that maybe drives, 30 miles to that area, they engage in their recovery, they're getting the benefits, and they say, you know what, I want to take this home with me into my community so people don't maybe have to drive as far, or I just want to get in on the action of facilitating, and so a meeting pops up. Typically, the people that are Smart Recovery facilitators, by and large, are past Smart Recovery participants. So that's kind of another unique thing that we're doing here. Some of our participants have gone on to become facilitators, but a lot of the people that are guest, that are volunteer facilitators locally are really people that just want to give back and maybe don't have a personal experience with addiction. So that kind of makes it locally a bit unique.
Yeah. Thank you. And to your point of of the two programs, working together, I've been fortunate enough to be able to go see an addictions counselor, and so much of what you presented is exactly what she does with me. So I'm I'm a huge proponent of people getting professional help, and I think this is great. Thank you so much for doing it.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas, for your questions. Looks like we're 5 minutes over. So that is it for our forum. Thank you for coming, and we'll be in touch soon about our next one.
I did want to throw out there real quick, just because Lucas, you said you're in recovery yourself. If you're interested in joining our groups, you can go to smartrecovery.org. They have a meeting finder, just like the ones they have for AA. You punch in zip code 6044, and you'll see our Wednesday and Friday night meeting pop up in case that's something you're interested in. Same goes for you, Nobuyuki. If that's something you're interested in, that's how you can access our meetings If any of you have a pen or notebook handy, I will also give you the smart line number and I'll put that in the chat. It's 785-550-0764, and that's every day from 4 to 8 p.m. Central Time. So feel free to use that. Feel free to give that out to friends and family that may be struggling also. And thanks again, Scott and Sergey, for putting this on, and thanks for everyone for attending. Have a good night.
Have a good
You
night,
too.
everyone.